Hello, everyone, and welcome to Slash Film Daily for January 30th, 2017. On today's show, we're going to be diving into a bunch of news, including the first reactions from Marvel's Black Panther, the first Ant-Man and the Wasp trailer. We'll give you a reaction to that, and also the Mute trailer. A Crank Cinematic Universe. Is it possible? The first political poster for the First Purge and a Metropolis TV series, Sans Superman, has been greenlit. We'll talk about all that and more. This is Peter Sciretta, and joining me on today's podcast is Slash Film Managing Editor Jacob Hall.
Hello, hello.
And writer Hoai-Tran.
Hey, everyone.
And Chris Evangelista.
Hello.
Okay, guys, let's jump into it. Last night, the premiere of Black Panther happened in Hollywood, California. I was not lucky enough to be invited to that, but I was lucky enough to attend a press screening. They had press screenings in New York and LA, and the first reactions have hit the web. Jacob, you stayed up late to compile the first social reactions because reviews are not allowed yet. What are people saying about Black Panther?
Well, first of all, you all better be very grateful that I stayed up way past my bedtime for this. So read it and enjoy it. Actually, the reactions were almost universally positive. I didn't see, while I was trawling through Twitter last night, I didn't see anything beyond anything below. At least it was good. Everybody seems to think it's either good or great. I know, Peter, you tweeted. I'm going to go ahead and read your tweet first. Black Panther looks, feels, and sounds unlike any Marvel film to date. A visual feast. Wakanda is amazingly realized. The antagonist actually has an arc with emotional motivations. Marvel's most political movie. So good. And that seems to be a good summary of a lot of what I heard. And
by the way, a lot of people after that tweet got mad that I said that this is a political movie. Like, I don't know. It seems like, some subset of this country really does not want to see a political Marvel movie.
I think later in this show we're going to have a big discussion about politics and movies, I think. But you're not the only person to say that. Everybody seems to say that, yeah, this movie is very different, not in the sense of it's just a different style like Thor Ragnarok was, but everybody seems to be pointing out that, yeah, this movie is a movie about black characters made by black filmmakers starring black actors. And that vibe is something we haven't seen in a superhero movie before. And it's inherently political because, race is political. It's something that a lot of people may try to sidestep and not talk about. But the fact that Black Panther seems to be addressing that head on and making it a part of the film's DNA. And we're talking about a movie set in Africa, which if you ignore colonialism, then you're ignoring Africa. Yeah. And so I think it's really, really interesting to hear that not only is this a fun Marvel movie full of great imagery and fun characters, everybody seems to be really, really obsessed with the female characters, which is great. I love the idea that there's a strong cast of black female women supporting this movie. But it seems to have stuff on its mind. And I know you probably can't say too much, Peter, but beyond it just being a more colorful, more thoughtful Marvel movie, is it a great Marvel movie or is it a great movie?
That's tough. I mean, I do think people that have not been watching these Marvel movies will enjoy this movie as a movie. But I think to me the biggest thing about this is Wakanda, which isn't an actual real place in Africa. It's a fictionalized place, but this movie feels like, when you see Moana or Coco and you feel enveloped into the culture of this place that you have not really been a part of. This movie feels like that, even though this place is not. I mean, it's inspired by African culture, but it's so good. And I think if I said this in another tweet, if this movie isn't nominated for costume art and production design awards next year, I will be seriously shocked. It is a visual feast, and yeah.
I guess this is a question I also want to ask HT and Chris, because as somebody who enjoys Marvel movies, I enjoy them a lot, and I loved Thor last year. I loved Civil War before that. Is it a little weird that every single Marvel movie tends to be greeted with, "This is the best one yet"? I feel like every single time we have a new wave of reactions, the newest one is always the best one.
I think it's not always the best one. You'll hear different things. I believe Thor Ragnarok was this is the funniest one yet. I think this one's the most different one yet.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because we're always talking about every time a Marvel movie comes out, everyone's talking about how groundbreaking it is or how it changes things up. And but there's also that criticism of Marvel movies looking very bland and kind of generic looking, at least with their color palettes. So I'm not really sure how to address that. I just think that, like Peter said, it's kind of each new Marvel movie brings something different to the plate. And like Thor was so funny and so irreverent, Black Panther really brings something that's incredibly colorful and stunning and has characters and a whole cast of characters we've never seen before. Again, this is coming from someone who hasn't seen the movie yet. I'm just going up based off my impressions from the early reactions and from the clips that we saw today. So, I mean, I'm excited for it. I think that this might be up top for one of my favorite Marvel movies yet. But again, I haven't seen it yet. That's what I'm hoping, though.
Jacob, do you want to read any of the other reactions?
Yeah, sure. Let me pull up a few more. I'm scrolling through here. In fact, I'm going to go. Earlier, somebody rightfully realized that we didn't have enough people of color on this list of critics, so I updated it. So I want to go through it and read some reactions from some critics who aren't white dudes. So this is from Rebecca Theodore Vachon. I'm hoping I'm pronouncing that correctly. Y'all. Black Panther is everything I wanted and so much more. Ryan Coogler has changed the game for MCU. My God. She goes on to say,
I love we now have a white dude reading a black woman.
I feel awful. I'm sorry if this comes off in a bad way, but I feel like this is the audience who I am most curious to hear from. Yeah. She also says Lupita Nyong'o and Denai Guerrero bring the heat in Black Panther. Their action scenes have the audience cheering and clapping. I loved every second. Let's see, more white dudes. Travell Anderson says Black Panther is a love letter about blackness to a world that often ghettoizes it without realizing that it is on black backs that this planet revolves. White dudes. Kendra James says, I am here to say that Black Panther is an excellent film with the most realistic Marvel villain. And we have a lot more. I think I ended up collecting close to 30 reactions from film critics and even a few filmmakers on this list. And you should definitely go to the show notes and check out the full list of reactions from all kinds of people. I'd say lots of white dudes, but also some not white dudes.
Yeah, and speaking of white dudes, Ben Pearson was also at the screening with me today. He's at the Black Panther junket interviewing some of the filmmakers and star of the film. And so he's not here on the podcast, but he was able to record a brief reaction from the screening last night.
Black Panther is the 18th movie in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and I imagine that anything that runs that long, you're probably going to start to see and notice patterns that begin to form there. The structure of a lot of these movies, the formula, so to speak, is pretty familiar at this point. It's a lot of these stories, when you break them down to their bare bones, are pretty much just heroes' journeys wrapped up in daddy issues and dressed up with a lot of really cool CGI. But Marvel has never leaned into an aesthetic as much as it did in Black Panther. And even in movies that are super stylized that they've done, like Guardians or Thor Ragnarok, those movies do not carry the weight that Black Panther does. There's so much history there. There's so much lived in a feeling. The characters are all great, and this movie is going to inspire an entire generation of people. So all of that stuff sort of overshadows any of the formulaic complaints that may pop up about it, because the characters are so awesome. They're so great to spend time with these people, and just the notion that this movie exists in the form that it does, that Ryan Coogler was able to make a movie that is like unapologetically black and for black audiences, but also for larger audiences. The people in my screening were just losing their minds, and I think people are going to go nuts when they see this movie, and rightly so. They've been waiting a long time to see something like this. Representation is a super important issue that we've talked about many times on the site before, and I'm really glad that Marvel has allowed Ryan Coogler to make a movie that really will speak to a lot of people in a really deep way.
Well said, Ben. I've totally have not heard what his reaction is yet, and am editing into the podcast later today. But I wholeheartedly agree. Yeah, let's move on from Black Panther to DC, from Marvel to DC. It seems like DC has greenlit another TV series, a Superman show, another Superman show without Superman. HT, what do we know?
So DC and Warner Brothers TV have given a straight-to-series order for Metropolis, which is a prequel to the Superman sort of canon, starring Lois Lane and Lex Luthor as two partners who investigate the world of fringe science and expose the dark secrets of Metropolis. So it has nothing much to do with Superman himself, and I guess little to do with Metropolis, really, because it's more about just like this sort of bizarre partnership between Lois and Lex, who are two people you wouldn't quite expect to be paired together, investigating fringe science in a premise that seems lifted straight out of the Fox TV series Fringe. So this is coming to the digital streaming service from DC, which will also house the upcoming live-action Titans series, as well as the revival of the cult animated show and one of my favorite shows, Young Justice. So it is in good company, I guess, but it does seem like an odd choice for a Superman series, but also not quite unexpected because we have seen a kind of a flurry of superhero-less superhero series like Gotham, or even you could consider Arrow and The Flash, CW's TV series that do feature superheroes but are centered more around like the character interactions and the sort of primetime soap operas of them.
And let's not forget Smallville, which started this all.
And Smallville, yes.
But they also greenlit, we're going to get Krypton, which is another Superman-less Superman show.
All Superman shows that have to do with places he's lived.
Yeah. Jacob, you're a big comic book reader. What is the strategy behind this? Is Warner Brothers, is this a good strategy to make, TV shows based on their big superhero figures, but not featuring those actual characters?
I have no idea. I guess Gotham does well enough for them to think it's okay. I mean, I haven't watched Gotham in years, but it by all accounts has stopped being a Batman show together and just says, here's a thing set with these characters you may recognize. It feels like it's an easy way to have familiar iconography and maybe run off and do your own thing. Like instead of saying, oh, we want to have these characters investigate fringe supernatural things, it's like, oh, they're people you know, come watch this show. So maybe it's an easier sell to people, if at least they think it's an easier sell if people recognize their names beforehand. But I don't know. I guess my whole thing is I'm not opposed to a TV show set in Metropolis. It's about Lois Lane and Lex Luthor. They're great characters. I just don't understand why you remove Superman from the mix. Superman helps define their world and their worldviews. So I would love to see this show about these two people living in Metropolis in their day-to-day lives, but Superman kind of hanging above them as something that's not even a major part of their lives, but something that's just always around. That to me is more interesting than them solving mysteries. This sounds like a joke. I don't get the appeal at all.
Yeah, I will say this. I did watch Smallville for more seasons than I care to admit, and I think one of the best parts of that show was Michael Rosenbaum's Lex Luthor, and I almost wished that they had a show with it was him as the central character. So I don't know. It could be interesting. I don't know. Chris, you are also a reader of comics. What do you think about this?
I think I would love a Lois Lane show that's about Lois Lane being a journalist. I think that's a really neat idea, but that does not sound like that's what this is. This sounds like it's just trying to be another Law and Order set in Metropolis, which maybe could work, but I kind of hate the idea that they're teaming her up with Lex Luthor. Like, why is Lex Luthor solving crimes? That sounds like a really stupid idea to me. I don't know. Maybe that's just me, but like if the show were about Lois Lane being a journalist and reporting on stories, that'd be neat. I'd watch that. The last season of The Wire, but with Lois Lane. I'd love that. But this, I don't know what to make of this.
Yeah, the solving crimes thing is weird. I kind of thought at first, like, what if it was like the first season of House of Cards? I feel like that you could do that with, like, you know, the Lex Luthor character being kind of the Kevin Spacey character, and you know, her being the journalist, and their passing, and, you know, stuff like that. But I don't know. We'll have to see. It's DC's digital service, so I'm not sure how much faith we have in the budget and quality of that show, but we'll have to see. But let's move on from that to the Crank cinematic universe. Chris, is it going to happen?
Boy, I hope so. Brian Taylor and Mark Nevedine, again, I'm probably saying his last name wrong, but sorry. They've been talking about making a Crank 3 for a long time now. It just hasn't happened. Crank 2 was not a huge hit, which sort of derailed a Crank 3, but, you know, for years they've been providing updates, and they keep saying everyone wants to do it. In a new podcast interview, Brian Taylor said not only does he want a Crank 3, he wants an entire Crank cinematic universe. He doesn't actually provide any details on what that would be. I mean, I don't know what that would even look like, but I'm all for it. Let's do it. Why not?
I mean, we talked yesterday about Deep Blue Sea 2, and I've obviously made my feelings about wanting ridiculous, insane movies in TV shows. You know, like, I would love to see a Crank cinematic universe. Crank 2 is batshit crazy. And HT, Jacob, are either of you a fan of that series?
I can't say I am. I normally love crazy things, but for some reason, those movies rub me the wrong way, so I'm going to sit this one out because enough people really love those movies that I don't want to rain on any parades.
Wait. Why do they rub you the wrong way?
Oh, man. It's been years since I've seen them. I saw them both when they first came out, and I feel like there's no method to their madness. I feel like it's a series of events as opposed to a constructed cacophony of escalation, which is kind of how I want my crazy movies to work. I feel like it's things being thrown at a wall and seeing how they stick, as opposed to somebody thinking through how to make the crazy work. And like I said, I know I'm in the minority here. These movies have big fans. I wish I liked them. I wish I loved them in the way that people love those movies. So I like bring on Crank 3. I probably won't see it, but I hope this happens because I like the people who like these movies. They're my friends and family. So it's all I can say.
HT, are you a fan of the Crank series?
I've seen the first Crank, but I will admit I kind of mix up all the Jason Statham single title B action pulp movies like Mechanic and Transporter.
Well, that's what they really should do, is have the Jason Statham cinematic universe where it
that
just
I would
combines
watch.
all
That
of them.
I would be really excited to see.
If they reveal that all Jason Statham characters are all identical siblings who have all spread out across the world and all team up, all played by Jason Statham for like a big Avengers-style movie, I will buy 10 tickets on opening day.
I would too. I would as well. That would be amazing. But yeah, I have a feeling that this Crank cinematic universe is never going to see the light of day as much as I would like to see it. Let's go on to The Purge. There's a new Purge movie that's coming out. They have released the new poster, which gives us a title and a sense of what the movie is about. Jacob, tell us about it.
Well, we actually knew The Purge 4 was coming in September of last year, but back then it was called The Purge: The Island. And it was going to be a prequel to the third movie, because the third film kind of wraps things up enough that it'll be hard to keep going forward. But this new poster reveals the new title, which is called The First Purge, which keeps in mind that it is a prequel. It goes back to the very first Purge, and it's going to take place entirely on Staten Island, where the first Purge is conducted as an experiment. And for those of you who don't remember, The Purge is a horror series set in a dystopian sci-fi near future universe where America is now run by an authoritative regime who once a year legalized crime for one night. And what the movie wears on its sleeve very openly and proudly is that they're very political and very unashamed of it. And the sequels make it very clear that the reason why crime's legalized for one night a year is so that the rich and powerful can gain more power, and people who are poor, lower class, or people of color, mostly, who cannot defend themselves, are being wiped out. And pushed further and further out of the country. So it's a really, really dark premise. And the new poster, all it is a white background with a very familiar red hat with very familiar white font that says The First Purge, with a release date of July 4th. And I don't need to tell you what the red hat and the white font means in 2018. We've all seen them. Some of us have been very distressed by them and embarrassed by them. But naturally, I think it's such great trolling, though. I mean, the Purge movies have always been about selling you this violent premise of come watch people kill each other, come watch this reckless night of mayhem. Then you're actually in the theater, and it goes, actually, let's pause so these characters can discuss race relations and how the Purge exists to destroy black people. And it's like, whoa, what am I watching? And so this is just the Purge being the Purge, and it's no longer even trying to hide it. You may remember that the Purge 3, subtitled Election Year, it came out in 2016. Its slogan was "Keep America Great," implying that America has been made great again, in quotation marks, by having a night where people murder each other. So this series has been... This is not surprising.
Do you think this hat might tease an appearance from a certain president, or do you think it's just a clever play?
I think it's just a clever image. It's a joke. I don't think we're actually going to see anything here. I think that the evil leaders of the Purge are much, much smarter than the man who is associated with that hat. So, but. This opens up another door. I actually had an entire paragraph about this in the article that I deleted because I couldn't make it work in a way that wasn't me shouting at people. And that is that this is going to get reactions like, keep the politics out of my horror movies. Why do movies need to have politics? Why does Black Panther need to be political? And this is the thing I'm going to open the floor to Chris and HT because I know they have thoughts on this. But all art is political. I mean, Paul Blart Mall Cop is a political movie because it chooses not to be political. But making a decision to say, we're going to avoid things that people talk about in real life and are connected to real life, that's a political decision. So I'm curious, HT, Chris, and Peter, how do you feel about a movie like this using politics so brazenly into marketing, and how do you feel with the argument of keeping politics out of movies? Start with you, HT. I want to hear what you think.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you completely. I think that no art is made in a vacuum. I think all art is inherently political, and if some movies or TV shows choose to refrain from politics, that in itself is a political decision. And I do think that the sort of on-the-nose marketing of the politicism in this movie is, like I said, it's a little on the nose, but I really admire when movies aren't afraid of sort of wielding that politics on their sleeves. And I think especially in this time now when the line between politics and entertainment is increasingly blurred because of who we have at the top of the administration, I think that it's more important now than ever for art to become a point of discussion upon which we can sort of kick off into a larger discussion, use that to create movements. I mean, we've seen that more recently with the Weinstein effect, especially, and with women and people of color demanding more representation, more politics, and more statements in their movies. And I think, too, the popularity of more politically and socially minded movies is proof of that as well. Get Out, I don't think would have been as popular maybe 10 years ago as it is now, just because of the really political environment we find ourselves in. And I know people can get tired of that, but I think that it's inevitable. I mean, even 10, 20 years ago, art movies were political. It just seemed like it was less so because it wasn't discussed as much.
Chris, I know you were a little more uneven, a little more unsure about this poster. I want to hear your thoughts on this.
I don't want to, I'm afraid of launching into this diatribe where I just sound like a lunatic, but I will say the argument to keep politics out of art is a very silly one. Like you said, Jacob, all art is political. There's actually a great documentary called Nightmares in Red, White, and Blue, which is all about how pretty much every decade of horror movies is reacting to political events of that decade. It draws these really interesting comparisons. So I don't have any problem with politics in art, especially horror, because horror is a great. It's my favorite genre. My problem is the people who write the Purge movies are not very smart, and I'd rather someone who's a better writer handling this material because, again, I'm going to get political here. I'll try to keep it at a minimum, but I think we find ourselves in a very dangerous time based on who's in control right now, and I'd rather someone smarter address that than just have it be like a hacky sort of jokey horror movie. I'd rather there be an actual better message. I'd rather than what the Purge movies offer. But that's me. I know a lot of people are loving this poster. They think it's great, and that's fine. It rubbed me the wrong way.
No, I get that. I think that the Purge does have that trashy exploitative style going for it, which I think that if you go back to like political horror of the 70s and 80s, I feel like from a distance we can better appreciate what it was going for. I'm curious how you will feel and how all of us will feel if we survive in a few decades.
Yeah.
To how the politically minded horror, trashy or non-trashy, from this era does hold up.
Well, I do think it's important to have films that are not these smart made, like, documentaries or, films by master filmmakers kind of address these political issues, because then it gets those kind of issues to an audience that might not watch those kind of, those kind of movies, because I feel like those kind of movies somewhat are speaking to the choir. I am conflicted about political messages in movies. I do think that art should have political messages. I think where I might have a problem with political messages in movies is when they're too obvious or it like feels too dated in that time. Like, so if I saw this movie 20 years from now and it doesn't make sense, like, it has to be universal. Do you know what I mean? Like, the political message has to be universal. Like has to be like 1984, where like you can take that allegory. Like, it's not. Does that make sense? Like, I feel like sometimes
it's not something that's limited to that time period. Essentially,
I feel like sometimes it can really date a story when you do political messages and stuff, but I think when you're more universal about what you're trying to say, I think it does. I guess what I'm saying is when you do it well, it's fine.
Yeah, I can't remember if I used the phrase time capsule or artifact in my article, but I do think that's what the Purge will be. I don't think in 20 years we'll look at the Purge as great movies, but I do think they're going to be saying, oh, that was a time and place reflected by these movies and their feelings. So I do think the movie, like 1984, is an all-time classic, whereas like The Purge is a snapshot for right now. And in a few decades, the only people who care will be the people who write about horror movies.
They'll be like, wow, the black were persecuted? Okay. Anyways, the last two stories we have here are trailers that hit today that you can find on slashfilm.com, and we're going to give our reactions to these trailers. The first of which is Ant-Man and the Wasp, which I assume is going to be attached to Black Panther when that hits theaters in a couple weeks. So I guess let's start off with HT. What did you think of the new Ant-Man trailer?
I liked it. It was basically in line with what I expect for an Ant-Man movie. It was very snappy, fun, a little bit irreverent. It has that same sort of that humor that we saw in the first Ant-Man, where, for example, in this trailer, we see a giant Hello Kitty Pez being pelted at a motorcyclist behind who's pursuing the heroes. One thing I did really like was the spotlight with Evangeline Lilly's character, Hope, and she definitely lives up to her title role in this film so far. So that one was really exciting for me. There was a lot of leaning heavily on the events of Captain America Civil War. So that was interesting because the first Ant-Man itself was very, very isolated. It was kind of in its own little corner of the universe. But now this Ant-Man and the Wasp is very much part of that Marvel Cinematic Universe because of Scott's participation in Civil War. And now with the trailer, this is not really a spoiler, Scott, Hope, and Hank are sort of fugitives on the run because of Scott's participation with Steve Rogers' team. So that sort of on the run plot point will be interesting to see. It makes it a little more dire, but again, it kind of has that sort of lighthearted tone to it. So that seems fine to me. I was a little sad not to see Michelle Pfeiffer at all in this trailer, which I was really excited when she was announced to be part of the film, but we didn't see a glimpse of her, although we did see Michael Peña's scene-stealing character once again, so that was exciting.
Oh, I love him. I think Marvel should bring back those short films and do one on him, just his character. I do think it's smart of them to put the Civil War stuff up front because, I don't think Ant-Man is still a character that can be sold by himself. They have to be like, look, he's part of this bigger thing that you love. But it is kind of cool that they, acknowledged why the Wasp was not in that Civil War scene, which I from what I understand, she was originally written in that scene, but they decided, let's not introduce her and, let's not shorthand her introduction. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. What makes Ant-Man fun for me is these sequences where, you're changing the different sizes from small to giant. There's some fun stuff we see here, like the stuff that you mentioned. The nitpicker in me, wonders, when they change the size of a van to the size of a Matchbox car and the Matchbox car is still keeping up with the car above it. Seems like very implausible to me in my mind, because that would mean that the Matchbox car would have to be going, a lot faster, technically? Am I wrong there?
Yeah.
Peter, you're driving me crazy, Peter.
Yes, I have nitpicks, and I also have nitpicks on they shrink a building, which is a very cool image, but then I'm like, so wait, was there wheels on the bottom of the building, and was there that handle that comes up, was that built into the building?
You shrink the building, add on those accessories, and unshrink it. Voila.
But we didn't seem to see that. Okay, anyways, these are just nitpicks. I'm going in to see this movie. I'm excited to see it. I'm not sure about the music in this trailer. Chris, what did you think of this trailer?
I know I have this reputation as hating everything.
Chris, why do you hate fun?
I take exception to this because I don't hate everything, but I did not like this trailer. I think the first Ant-Man did very little for me. This trailer, it looks hideous. Everything is just gray. Like I haven't seen Black Panther yet, but those trailers are so vibrant and colorful. And to go from that to this, where everything is the color of a parking lot, it's just like, what the hell? Like, what's going on? Can't they just hire a better cinematographer? It really bugs me.
Hey, at least it's not as bad as Inhumans, which was set in a concrete parking lot, apparently.
Well, apparently this is sort of the Marvel house style outside of Black Panther, because this was the criticism that Captain America Civil War got levied against it during the big parking lot fight scene.
It's like they're fighting in the Walmart parking lot. Like, that's not exciting. Give me something to look at here. But that said, my favorite part of the trailer is actually the scene where Michael Douglas shrinks the building and it has wheels on it. So I personally love that scene. Yeah. But beyond that, this did very little for me.
And by the way, I don't want to say that I don't love those scenes. It's just I'm just bringing up these ridiculous nitpicks that I realize are ridiculous nitpicks. It's kind of like watching Star Wars: Last Jedi. I'm like, but there's no gravity in space. How are those bombs dropping? It's not something that bothers me about the film. It's not something I dislike about the film, but I have ridiculous nitpicks.
Gotta put on your fedora for a little bit, Peter.
Yeah. Jacob, what do you think of the trailer?
It looks good. We'll see more Ant-Man. I'm in.
Okay, well said. So I guess let's move on to Duncan Jones's Mute. This is a film that has, we've been anticipating for quite some time. I think after Moon, he was talking about doing this film, and then he ended up doing Source Code and then Warcraft, and Mute is coming out on Netflix next month, and we finally have a trailer. I'll start this off. I'm excited to see this because I have faith in Duncan Jones. I didn't love Warcraft, but I liked his other two movies. But I was hoping this was a bigger story than it seems to be. We do get these Blade Runner-esque kind of city views, but then it seems like a lot of it takes place in these rooms that aren't very spectacular. I don't know. We don't really have much to go on, I think, in this trailer. You know, I'm gonna pass this over to someone else. Jacob, what do you think of Mute?
I'm going to open by saying I love Duncan Jones. Warcraft's a bad movie, but it's a really well-made, interesting bad movie. I've been looking forward to the movie for a long time. I don't mind it being small. It's always been pitched as a character-driven noir set in a science fiction universe. This is a bad trailer. This is a very poorly cut trailer that doesn't make much sense, doesn't flow, doesn't sell performances or characters. It is just a lot of images, a lot of dialogue that seems a little stilted in a vacuum, and it has me concerned after years of looking forward to this. And I'm still high on Moon and Source Code, Duncan Jones' first two movies, and I'm really hoping that this will be a thing that when we see it in context, it's going to be, oh, yeah, that makes sense, because I don't know how you sell Moon. Moon's not a movie you can cut a trailer for very easily. But this trailer, like, had my jaw on the floor in the wrong way, me thinking, oh, no, this looks disappointing. And this is why I don't want to judge a book by its cover, a movie by its trailer, but watching this was kind of a rough 2 minutes, and I felt really bummed out by it because I love Jones, and this is a 70s style science fiction film with noir storytelling is my thing. That's my jam, and it's going to be day one viewing for me. When this hits Netflix, I'm watching it. Yeah. But it's still watching this trailer, and I felt like the air leave my body. I was so disappointed by what I was seeing. But like I said, I'm talking about a trailer is sometimes silly. I hope I'm wrong. HT, Chris, what do you guys think?
I was just gonna say, with the negativity thus far, I'm kind of scared to go to Chris.
Well, let me let me calm you all down and say I actually think this is a very good trailer. I'm surprised that everyone doesn't like it. Wow. I don't know. Maybe I'm a lunatic where I'm the only one who likes it. But I was fine with this trailer. I do think it's a deliberately vague trailer. It's playing things very close to the vest, and it's not giving a lot away. But I'm okay with that. Like everyone else has said so far, I too love Duncan Jones. I've yet to see Warcraft, but I love Moon. I really love Source Code. I think Source Code is one of the most underrated films of the last decade. So I'm excited to see what happens here, and I'm fine with this trailer. And I love Paul Rudd's mustache.
I was going to say, what about his mustache?
It just looks great. It's a good-looking stash.
It's a very bushy, very good, firm mustache.
So, HT, what do you think of the Mute trailer?
It didn't do much for me either way. I'm kind of like in between Jacob and Chris here. I am intrigued by it because I do really like Duncan Jones, and Moon was one of my favorite sci-fi movies of the last decade or so. Yeah, it's a really good film, and Source Code 2 is good. But this film, it's inevitable that the Blade Runner 2049 and Blade Runner comparisons will get drawn between them, and I just kind of kept getting flashbacks to Blade Runner 2049 as I was watching the trailer. But I do like the cast. I'm intrigued by whatever Alexander Skarsgård's doing, and I do like Paul Rudd in a mustache. There's a fun whiplash watching the Ant-Man trailer and then the Mute trailer back to back, and just seeing Paul Rudd play this really gruff kind of hitman type of character. So I enjoyed seeing that. But I don't really know enough about the movie, I guess, to really pass judgment on it. But I guess I'm moderately excited.
Yeah, and it also weird that these trailers were released within hours of each other. It's kind of like his Paul Rudd trailer Tuesday. But I think all of us will agree that we're excited to see this movie when it hits Netflix in February. It's just, I don't know. I was kind of hoping, I'd seen concept art that had like this kind of Blade Runner-esque future city, and it like looked very Blade Runner, and I was like, oh, but Duncan Jones is going to do something, it's going to be different in some way. It's going to be better. I don't know. I'm a little worried that it feels like it just is kind of like, let's make this Blade Runner city. I don't know. Does that make sense? Like, it feels very derivative, and I'm hoping that Duncan Jones's touches are on this, and actually there is something more. But I don't see it in this trailer. But I'm excited. We'll see. But that does it for today's edition of Slash Film Daily. You can find more on all these stories on slashfilm.com. If you go to slashfilm.com, you can find all the, like almost 30 reactions to the Black Panther. You can watch the trailers, read all the stories we talked about today. You can find this podcast, Slash Film Daily, published every weekday on iTunes, Google Play, Overcast, all the popular podcast apps. You can send us emails, questions, comments, concerns, feedback at peter@slashfilm.com. Please go rate and review this podcast on iTunes. Spread the word. Tell your friends. And we'll see you tomorrow.